Hi, this is Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. But before we get into the Bible study, I want to thank you if you've been watching these 5-minute Bible study videos this past year. Over the last 52 weeks, I've covered the overall narrative of the Old Testament. Of course, I had to leave a bunch of things out, but hopefully you got a sense of the overall story of what's going on in the Old Testament. This year, for the next 52 weeks, we're going to move into the New Testament. However, given that there's so much good stuff in the New Testament, I'm not going to cover it all in one year. Instead, the plan is that this next year, I'm going to talk about the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Mark, since there's so much good stuff there about Jesus. Then, I'll cover Luke and John, and then we'll go on with the rest of the New Testament. So, this year, these 5-minute Bible study videos are going to be about the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Mark. Now, to get into today's video. Today we're going to start at the very beginning of the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 17. This is Jesus' genealogy. Now, for many of us, this is incredibly boring reading. It's not really engaging because it's just a list of names. Who was the father of who was the father of who, and so on and so on. Some of the older versions, like the King James Version, has a bunch of begats. So-and-so begat, so-and-so begat, so-and-so. And it's just really boring reading. But if we look at it, there's some really cool stuff to pay attention to. First of all, we need to think about why the genealogy is included at all. When we study genealogy today, or if you've ever studied family history, you do that because you want to know where you came from. And you do it for your own family. Chances are pretty good if you've ever done any kind of genealogy or family history study, it's been for your family. Sometimes people will do this kind of research about famous people. They'll want to know where this famous person came from, like reading a biography or an autobiography of some celebrity. But typically, when you do this kind of stuff, you're looking at your own family. In the Gospel of Matthew, we're learning about the family of Jesus. Where did Jesus come from, right? We're reading the story of Jesus now, so we want to know this background. When we look at this genealogy, though, there's something really interesting that we see. As we read through, there's a bunch of names of men, which was common, but in this particular genealogy, we get the names of 4 women. Now, that might strike us as strange, but when we look at these women, it's interesting who shows up. We get Tamar, Rahab, Bathsheba, who's actually referred to as a wife of Uriah. We don't actually get her name, and Mary. Now, of course, you need to go back to the Old Testament to read the stories about Tamar, Rahab, and Bathsheba, and most of us already know the story of Mary. But these 4 women, if you compare their stories and see what's going on in each of them, you'll notice that all 4 women have some kind of shady sexual history. Either they were raped, or they were prostitutes, or like Mary, she was a virgin and she shouldn't have had a baby, this kind of thing. When we notice that these 4 particular women are included in this genealogy, it reminds us that God can use anybody. Your past doesn't matter. Things that have happened in your life, none of that can prevent God from using you. God's still going to use you. God used these 4 women in the ancestry of Jesus. Because of these women, Jesus was born. That's incredible to think about. So when you look at this genealogy, don't just gloss over it. Don't just ignore it like it's some boring piece that you'd have to read, or you can just skip over to the good parts. Notice who's listed here. This listing reminds us that not only is Jesus part of the Old Testament story, but he's also a part of the lives of these women who had these things happen to them. And if God can use them to bring about incredible things, God can certainly use you. There's your 5-minute Bible study for the day. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.